Perhaps more so than ever before, it is indeed a Big News Wednesday. Welcome, one and all, to the Damage Report. I'm Iadarola. She is Francesca Fiorentini. What the hell are you doing here on a Wednesday? What is going on in the world?
I just want to switch it up. Keep people on their toes. Another Trump indictment. I knew it was coming on Tuesday, so I was just like, I paid JR a little.
Miss it.
Slipped him a $5.
That's all it takes, because he really doesn't care about any of this stuff. No. But anyway, yes, it is Indictment Day. Happy Indictment Day, everyone. As we were talking about before the show, it's basically like Groundhog's Day. It's like, oh, it's that time of the week again, where the indictments of the former president come. Okay, well, look, we're joking, but we are gonna take this seriously, and we're gonna do that for a while. Actually, there's a lot here, so buckle up. And honestly, if for at least the next big chunk, you're not interested in this, I think, indisputably crucial story, then go get a snack, because we're going to be talking about it for a while, everybody.
Go listen to NPR, where they're like, but haven't many presidents been indicted for trying to overturn democratic elections?
Yep.
And you're like, no, they haven't.
Well, there's all these indictments, but like, Hunter Biden, he had sex, so
yeah,
either way.
He did.
But anyway, in addition to all of this, so we're gonna be diving into a lot of different angles on this. We do have other news we're gonna be talking about. We're gonna be doing our best to talk about a Proud Boy who is now suspected in a murder that he seems to have talked a lot about on TikTok. We also have updates on the SAG-AFTRA strike. We have every story needs heroes and villains, and even inside of this strike, we're having some of those develop on both sides. So that's gonna be fun, and that's just in the first hour. Coming up in the aftermath, we've got AI racism when it comes to headshots. Lizzo being accused of some pretty bad stuff. We're gonna be digging through that. And Marjorie Greene thinks everyone is conspiring to trigger her, and she's mostly mad at the Republicans about it. So that's gonna be a fun little mix up for her. She gets to be mad at someone new.
Also, anyway. Hi Marge, first time John and I have been on together since you watched us. So sup girl, hope you learned something in the next hour and a half.
She might admittedly be busy, not with being a congresswoman. She doesn't care about that. That's why she has time to record a podcast every day or whatever. Yes. But no, with the indictments and all that, she has to reassure everyone that she supports the criminal more than anyone. And there's a lot of competition in that. So get busy, Congresswoman Greene. Anyway, with all that said, we're gonna be diving into this. Before that, hit the like button if you're on a platform where that makes sense. Share the stream otherwise, and gird yourself as we jump into this. You can, along the way, send us comments, tweets, super chats, and we'll respond as we go. And you know what? I'll say the Blue Apron gift card that we give away on a daily basis for $100 will go to one of the members on the different platforms with the best message about the indictment, something to do with the indictment. Make it insightful, make it fun, whatever you want to do, and we'll evaluate as we go. But with all that said, Francesca, you ready to start the show?
Show me the indicty whiteys.
Okay, we're not gonna do that, but we are gonna show you this.
I did everything right and they indicted me.
Oh boy, did they. We're talking about the indictments, obviously. I've been dying to talk about the indictments, but before we dive into all the details, it's here. This is the one. This is the biggest one I assume that he'll ever face. He's facing many indictments. You're probably like, it's Wednesday, surely he's being indicted. And I get that. And the other crimes are serious. The violation of campaign finance with the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, the accusations he's facing from E. Jean Carroll, the classified documents, and soon to come Fulton County. But this is the biggest one. Donald Trump is now indicted. He's been indicted, a 45-page indictment for his multifaceted scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election. It is being pitched as, because it is a direct assault on the core of American governance, our ability to determine who our leaders are and to have our votes actually count for what little they're allowed to count for under the normal status quo of elections. And so overall, he is being charged with a number of criminal conspiracies. One, to defraud the United States. A second to obstruct an official government proceeding, the certification of the Electoral College vote, obviously. And a third to deprive people of a civil right, the right to have their votes counted. He was also, by the way, charged with a fourth count of obstructing or attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. Now, that is what he's being charged with, and we're gonna dive into what that means, what that could lead to, what the evidence is. But before that, I'm going to waste 10 seconds of your life by pointing out what he is not being charged with. And I say this is a waste of time because every single MAGA head in the world will pretend that this is what he is being charged with, but he's not. He's not being charged for his statements about the election. He's certainly not being charged for his thoughts about the election, saying that the election was rigged. That's not what he's being charged for. It doesn't charge him for his early legal efforts to overturn the results of the election, even though he knew at that point that he had legitimately lost. In fact, the indictment goes out of its way to say all of that is perfectly fine. It says the defendant has a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there have been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He's also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote. He did all of these. He did the many lawsuits. It did not help him. As they say, these efforts were uniformly unsuccessful. So when you hear right wingers saying he is being charged as a violation of his free speech rights or for saying something or fighting vigorously, no, he's not being charged with any of those things. He's being charged with specific actions designed to put forward these conspiracies in those specific areas that don't have anything to do with thought, anything to do with speech. They have to do with the actual mechanisms of the transfer of power. So we're gonna dive into all this, but Francesca, what do you make of the fact that we're now launching into this thing? This is the big one, the big kahuna.
Yeah, I mean, good. This is the one where he tried to steal all of our votes, right? He tried to steal the American people's democracy. He tried to undermine our right to determine our leader. That's it, right? As much as that leader is Joe Biden. Can you imagine being that upset about Joe Biden being president? But there they were on January 6th, and this is crucially the one that he's got to get nailed for. Like truly, if we want to prevent this from ever happening again, this needs to happen, and he needs to be indicted for this. Yeah, he can try to run for president again somehow. But this is the one where the criminality, I think, matters for each and every single American, even the ones who voted for him. It is a little scary that it's like you can say whatever you want about the election because, and I'm curious to see exactly how Jack Smith parses that in terms of like the incitement to violence, a certain amount of violence, or we're gonna march down to the Capitol. It seems like he didn't even need that. All he needed was what he has proven, and we'll get into exactly what.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that you mentioned that at the end because in addition to all of the other things that he is not being charged with, at least at this point, he is not being charged with causing the insurrection. He is not being charged with the sacking of the Capitol, the attempted murder of Mike Pence or other members of Congress. He's not being charged with any of that. Now, of course, right wingers are saying that's what this is. In their defense, they didn't read the indictment. Some of them cannot. But that's not what he's being charged with. He's being charged with specific things, and we're gonna go over them. But first of all, I know what you're wondering. What does this mean? What could these different charges lead to? Well, quite a bit in theory. So the conspiracy to violate rights was first established way back to fight racist white Southerners like the KKK, who were trying to deprive Black Americans of their ability to vote. In this case, it could lead to 5 years in prison. Conspiracy to defraud the United States could also lead to 5 years in prison. And then you get into the more serious ones. Corrupt obstruction of an official proceeding and the conspiracy to commit that crime, each of those individually could lead to 20 years in prison. I am not a mathematician, but it's a lot. It's a lot for a guy of his age and lifestyle. So he could spend quite a bit of time in prison. Now, that does not mean that he couldn't run for prison. He's running for prison with all of his actions. He could still run for president. He could still be president, maybe. officially, thus far, he could still be president, even if he was found guilty of these. This was not sedition that he's been charged with. Now, in theory, he could be stripped of his authority under the 25th Amendment, which provides a process to transfer authority to the vice president if the president is, quote, unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, which arguably being locked up could do. Now, in theory, he could then sue, maybe saying that he has a constitutional obligation to do those duties and the imprisonment is stopping him from doing it. In any event, all of this, including the possibility of pardoning himself, this is all possible, but it is not well laid out. There is no established path for this because generally we have not had someone who's just criming left and right as president or after it. So almost certainly it would involve appeals. Those appeals would almost certainly go to the Supreme Court, and we don't know exactly what would happen. All we know at this point is if he was convicted of these, he probably couldn't vote. In fact, that's like the one thing that he definitely couldn't do. He could not vote in Florida, at least.
Boo-hoo, he never voted before. Like, who did the Trumps vote? They didn't care, they didn't vote. Remember how like Ivanka and Eric and Don Jr. were like, we're voting again / registering for the first time in New York. Like, yeah, rich people don't care, man. But yes, it's very boo-hoo, he couldn't vote. I think the 25th Amendment is very fascinating, especially considering that we don't know who his running mate is going to be this time around. So Marge, if you're watching, girl, could be you. It could be you, and look, if we'd all suffer, holy crap.
We'd all suffer, and I feel bad for Marjorie because there's a lot potentially standing in the way, but all of that could be cleared up by, Carrie Lake having, skiing accident or something, I suppose. So get on it. Anyway, obviously I don't believe in any of that. Okay, so we know that a lot of you who are watching this, you've been keeping up to date with this. You know more about the different plots and schemes and all that. But I want to focus on what's new. So what is new coming out of this latest indictment of the president, the most serious one? Well, some of the things are being pitched as new, but they're not new to me. They might not be new to you. The fact that Mike Pence had a conversation with Donald Trump, and in it, Donald Trump trying to get him to unilaterally overturn the results of the election, which of course he cannot do, tells Mike Pence, you're too honest. People are pitching that as new. It's not new, we knew about that. It's devastating, but it's not new. So here are some of the things that are new. The organization of how this trial is going to go. We're now learning sort of the bounds of it. And it's going to include a few different accusations about the various plots that Trump and his allies engaged in. So here are the big ones to focus on as we jump into this, and then we're going to dive into the actual indictment. So here are the different arms of it, basically, or the different heads of the Hydra. Knowingly making false claims of election fraud to get state legislators and election officials to subvert the legitimate election results. So that happened in several states. It involves trying to get them to overturn it. That's part of the conspiracy thing. You're trying to get them to do something illegal. Organizing a fraudulent slate of electors in 7 different targeted states. You've heard a lot about that one, of course. Trying to use the power of the Department of Justice to, quote, conduct sham election crime investigations. That also has a component of trying to use the DOJ to put out fraudulent letters implying that they had found results that were fraudulent. That was not true, but they were trying to get the DOJ to be a part of this thing. Trying to get former Vice President Mike Pence to fraudulently alter the election results, and then exploiting the violence of January 6th to get members of Congress to delay certification. That one's very important. Again, it is not saying that Donald Trump caused or anything having to do with January 6th, just that as January 6th was happening, he was using that violence as another means to get representatives and senators to obstruct the proceedings. So all of that is very important, but I want to jump into a couple more tidbits that I had not known about previously, at least. And you have to dig deep, but we read the entire indictment, unlike some Republican politicians commenting on it. And so they talk about co-conspirator 4, and we're gonna dive into the co-conspirators later on, who's talking with a deputy White House counsel. And the deputy White House counsel told the defendant, that's Donald Trump, that there is no world, there is no option in which you do not leave the White House on January 20th, making it very clear. And so the same deputy White House counsel tried to dissuade co-conspirator 4 from assuming the role of acting attorney general. That deputy reiterated to co-conspirator 4 that there had not been outcome determinative fraud in the election, and that if the defendant remained in office nonetheless, there would be, quote, riots in every major city in the US. To which co-conspirator 4 responded, well, it's that person, that's why there's an insurrection act. Now, this is not Donald Trump, but this is one of the co-conspirators saying, if there are riots over us stealing the election, we will deploy the military to put down those riots.
Yeah.
That is obviously not afraid of using violence to get their means, but it gets even more explicit. One senior advisor told co-conspirator 2, you're gonna cause riots in the streets. Co-conspirator 2 responded that there had previously been points in the nation's history where violence was necessary to protect the republic. So again, the team that he had put together was talking about the need to injure or kill people who had an issue with the fact that they were plotting to steal the election, Francesca. And these particular comments I had not known about.
Yes, the crazy goes right to the top. This is what we call an attempted coup. And what's crazy about all of this is that, yes, with the cast of co-conspirator nut jobs, because yes, they were, we're talking Jeffrey Clark, Rudy Giuliani. I really wanted Sidney Powell to be in this, but sadly she is not. She must, I think, take a back seat on this one.
She is, we'll get to it. Not in those particular
is she 6?
comments.
Is she 6? Anyway. It's very fun. This is like a game of Clue with all of the loonies who have been in the Trump orbit. But I just want to say that they were close. Like and the fact that this indictment doesn't have to do with inciting the riot, and the fact that the riot is almost a side note, a part of a broader plan, is really important, because what coups generally attempt to do is use that violence or chaos and like street brawls to basically say, look, the will of the people is on the side of this usurper. And then it enables the usurper to do the usurping, right? And claim their power even though they were not elected. And so that's what they were hoping to do. So honestly, like just a couple more, let's say, a couple more thousand people on the streets, a couple more Ted Cruzes, some Paul Gosars in there, and this could have truly been successful, as idiotic and harebrained and ridiculous as this was top to bottom, and false.
And it was
top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, so you're pointing out how ridiculous it is, but also one of the fun tidbits in the indictment was one of the top advisors pointing that out, saying, I'll obviously hustle to help on all fronts, but it's tough to own any of this when it's all just conspiracy blank beamed down from the mothership. That's referring to Trump's elite strike task force led by Rudy Giuliani, which sounds like what Elon Musk would name it. So yeah, even like the lawyers are like, I guess I'll do it, but this is insane and it's not gonna work. So that person knew what was going on at the very least. They should have been on the elite strike task force, actually, because they were sentient. Anyway, with that said, we are now invoking the co-conspirators, and that's where we need to jump into it. Importantly, in these new indictments, Donald Trump is not alone. He is just the head, the boss of a at least 6-person strong team of co-conspirators who pursued the various illegal schemes that are now being investigated. And it's important that you know that none of these co-conspirators are being formally named just yet. But much more importantly, and we'll return to this, they're not being charged with anything yet. However, we do have a listing of the co-conspirators, and people have done the research to try to figure out who these people are. In some cases, it's very easy. So you have co-conspirator 1, an attorney who spread false claims and pursued ridiculous harebrained strategies. That's my commentary. That appears to be Rudy Giuliani, who we are gonna talk about in significantly more detail later on. You have another attorney who devised and attempted to implement a strategy to leverage the vice president's ceremonial role to oversee the whole thing. That is John Eastman. He's the guy who wrote the initial memo about like, hey, what if Pence just steals the whole thing?
He broke out the quill pen and was like, but I'm using calligraphy to write this.
Exactly, it's official.
It's official. Okay, yeah.
Number three. Yeah, so number 3, an attorney whose unfounded claims of election fraud the defendant privately acknowledged to others sounded crazy. She was so bad, Trump was like, nah, nobody's gonna believe that. That appears to be, no, it's not the pillow guy, it's Sidney Powell.
Oh,
so she's tied into this.
My girl, Talbot's Yeti, what up, girl?
Yep. Then you also have Jeffrey Clark. So John Eastman, Jeffrey Clark were the 2 co-conspirators that basically said like, yeah, we'll gun people down the streets. Like, I honestly don't care. It's happened before. I'm paraphrasing there. And then 5 is Kenneth Chesebro.
Cheesebro, please.
Cheesebro, some sort of bro. There had to be.
If you're gonna say it right. It's Cheesebro.
Yeah,
that's
well, legally it ain't easy being cheesy, bro, because he might be in some trouble soon. Anyway, then finally you have number 6, a political consultant who helped implement a plan to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors. I don't know who that one is yet, so I haven't seen any like definitive good evidence of that. But why is this important? Well, first of all, for it to be a conspiracy, you need to have conspirators, people who are doing this. These are people in a variety of different areas, a variety of different levels, a variety of different connections to Trump, operating on a variety of different conspiracies. All of them could be very important in this. Now, as I said, they have not yet been charged with anything yet, but there is no reason to believe that they could not be. I'm not saying no reason for me to believe that. I'm saying no reason for them to believe that they could not be. Right now, there is a road where they don't get charged with anything and they don't go to prison. Bearing in mind that every one of them, notably, was not the president of the United States, is not a billionaire, and will not receive that sort of protection from being sent to prison. So all of these people who potentially have information they could provide to Jack Smith, the special counsel, are gonna be facing a lot of internal pressure and possibly external as well to flip and to participate so that they don't spend the rest of their lives in prison. But what do you think about that, Francesca?
It's very exciting. Let's just be honest, because these are not only people who behind the scenes helped Donald Trump try and subvert our democratic process. They are people who proudly and loudly have been running their mouths on every single random, like Newsmax podcast, Sirius SS like show where they're just like, spewing all of the same BS about Italy Gate and the Kraken, and and you saw the one, lady move the box in Fulton County, and just anything they can get their hands on. Like, I mean, let's be real. If 6 is not Mike Lindell, my guy got off real easy. He's gonna be out there. He's gonna still be running his mouth, but the rest of them better shut up as soon as humanly possible. But again, I think they're all sort of missing that, self-regulating little. I think the Kraken sort of nod their way through their skulls as well, sadly. But I blame Clinton for that. And but it's just so funny because they're lawyers who also have been effectively continuing to talk about these conspiracies over and over and over again. I think the real one that matters is, can you submit an alternate slate of electors to try and overturn the will of the American people? The answer is clearly no. Do they understand that? And if they don't, they're going to prison for much longer.
I think it's pretty clear. I will say that if you can, well then, what are we doing with any of this? What is this? These elections are utterly pointless. Whoever is in charge of the state legislature just wins, I guess. You just take over a couple of those and you win the election. Or if Mike Pence can just overturn it, well then, as long as you won the previous election, so you'll have a person of your party as vice president, then you just win. So we could save a lot of time actually in covering the 2024 race because Kamala Harris is vice president. So I guess this thing is wrapped up. I guess that's pretty much it at this point.
Yeah, she can just decide.
Anyway.
True.
Yes, so look, a lot of our attention over the next month or so is gonna be based on looking into the actions of these people. And we're gonna be focused, co-conspirator number 1, who's number 1 in my book as well, we're gonna be talking about after the break, but they could potentially be very important here. That said, I just wanna talk about one more area of this before we take our break. Donald Trump is being charged now with very serious crimes, the most serious crimes, so it's only fair that we give him a chance to respond. And thus far, I would say it's not persuasive. It's not gonna lead you to believe that he didn't do this. He put out a statement on official letterhead that says, "This is nothing more than the latest corrupt chapter in the continued pathetic attempt by the blah, 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 blah. Why did they wait 2.5 years to bring these fake charges right in the middle of the blah, blah, blah?" Yes, because clearly if they'd done these charges immediately after the election or after the swearing in of Joe Biden, they would have had any issue with it. Anyway, that's not what's important. But he goes on to say, the answer is election interference. Everything is. For some reason, investigating Joe Biden and his family, not election interference. Weird how that works out.
Yeah.
Anyway, the lawlessness of these persecutions of President Trump and his supporters is reminiscent of Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the former Soviet Union, and other authoritarian dictatorial regimes that normally I'm a huge fan of, but for this context, let's say they're bad. President Trump has always followed the rule of law and the Constitution with advice from many highly accomplished attorneys. Come on. I like that they slip in a joke at the end there. But anyway, that's what he's saying. Since then, he's moved on to, this is a good thing. He bleated, "Thank you to everyone. I have never had so much support on anything before." Sorry, but no. It's the case against you that's got a lot of support. I understand you might get that mixed up. The document's very long and it's not just bullet points. But anyway, nothing really new there, Francesca. It's braggadocio. It's more an attempt to control like the perception by the MAGA base of what's happening than to control what's really happening. This is not a legal argument. It doesn't even hint at a legal argument. It just aims at let me keep people on my side so I can be the nominee, so I can become the president, so I can try to pardon myself. That's what it feels like.
And he will be. That's what's so amazing about all of this. He's still gonna be the Republican nominee. Oh my goodness, what a party of beta male cucks. My goodness, you're gonna let a criminal be the head of your party? Tight, that's brilliant. Look at this all caps criminal putting out like 3 exclamation marks after every single sentence. Cool. Here's the thing that really bothers me, and something that legal analyst, writer Ellie Mistal has pointed out, is that remember after the January 6th riot and attempted coup, that Merrick Garland, Attorney General, did not open an investigation immediately, did not appoint Jack Smith immediately as a special prosecutor. That doesn't mean when you open an investigation, right? It doesn't mean you have all of the evidence right there. You're just opening and beginning the process. But because he took months to do so, apparently now that is why there's been a delay. And this legal process will drag on, yes, well into next year and perhaps beyond, and likely beyond the election. So it is very, and the reason that Merrick Garland didn't do that was because he was afraid it would look partisan. We covered that on this show, that he was afraid it would look too partisan. I don't know, like, I just, you know what? Good on the deep state for at least getting a little bit right on this. But man, I feel we are still so unprotected from what could potentially come next, either from Trump or someone like him.
God only knows. Okay, we're gonna take our first break. Oh, he also fundraised off this. It's really embarrassing.
Sure.
He wants $1. He's like, just give me $1. You're a billionaire, dude. What is going on? Anyway, we're gonna take our first break. When we come back, we're gonna break down the judge that will be overseeing this most important of trials, as well as how Rudy Giuliani fits into this whole thing. All that and more after this. Welcome back, one and all. If you're just joining us now on this massive day of news, please hit the like button. We're jumping back into all of the many details coming out of this new indictment. In a federal criminal trial, the judge is assigned randomly. And so for Donald Trump, who's gonna be facing the biggest threat ever in his life coming up very soon, it could go one of a couple different ways. He could get a judge that he himself appointed, like Eileen Cannon has previously sort of had his back in the classified documents case. He could have that. Or on the other hand, he could have what he got, which is a judge who probably is not gonna be super big fan of him. This is US District Judge Tanya Chutkan. We don't know everything that she believes about everything. And in terms of her record and her education, seems eminently qualified to do this and seems to be a person of great integrity. I'm just saying there are a few details that don't necessarily hint that this is gonna go super easy for the big guy. So back in 2021, she actually has previously dealt with Trump in the legal world. She was the judge, and you might recall this, who denied his 2021 motion to halt records from being turned over the January 6th committee, writing, "Presidents are not kings and plaintiff is not president."
Ooh.
Which is just love it. I remember that quote. I didn't remember her name, but I remember that quote, and that was good. She was appointed to the US District Court for the District of Columbia in 2014 by President Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
I don't think Obama and Trump have ever clashed in any way, so that doesn't matter. But yes,
they have nothing to do with one another. All right,
no,
let's not talk about it. There's just no correlation from Obama to Trump.
Yeah.
My God, we'll be talking about it forever.
Nothing. Anyway, so in terms of all of the different cases that have been going on around January 6th so far, Chutkan has been involved in a number of them and has apparently set tougher sentences than requested by the DOJ in a number of cases involving defendants on January 6th, citing the necessity of consequences for taking part in the insurrection. As of last month, Judge Chutkan has overseen 31 convicted January 6 rioters. In 9 cases, she went above the recommended sentencing. She matched the recommendation 14 times, and with misdemeanors in which the prosecution was not seeking jail time, she still sentenced jail time between 14 and 45 days. For some context, other judges have gone with the recommended sentencing 80% of the time. So a little bit of a gap there. Of course, some degree of discretion is up to the judge, so she hasn't done anything wrong in that case. And if she believes that there have to be consequences, which she says there do have to be consequences for participating in an attempted violent overthrow of the government beyond sitting at home, that doesn't mean that necessarily she would feel the same way about Trump, who is not, storming the barricades. He was just, impotently trying to choke out a Secret Service agent in a limo. So maybe this doesn't mean anything, Francesca, but what do you think?
I mean, Judge chucking him behind bars. I think we got ourselves a winner here. She is perfect for the job, if I do say so myself. And if any of us have any hope of seeing him serve even community service, y'all, let's just watch him pick up some dirty diapers by the side of the road. I would love to see that.
How did they get there?
I don't know why they're there, but they're there, right? I think this is our judge. I think this is the closest we're going to get. And Obama striking from beyond the presidency.
Okay, Obama. Yeah, thanks, Obama. He's given us, this is like 2 things now. Good, hey, he hit 2, good, awesome. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. But anyway, with that said, that's the judge. This is just our belief. Obviously, Trump deserves a fair trial. And when he gets that fair trial, he will pretend that it's not a fair trial, but he deserves it anyway, as everyone does. Okay, with that said, let's jump into a little bit more fun with this.
This one will be your legacy, violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not. It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are, or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome. And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last.
In his defense in that area, he is kind of the expert, so I guess he would know. In any event, Rudy Giuliani not responding well to the new indictments against Trump, and also the implied future new indictments against him, because it is no secret that in this particular political version of the Masked Singer, I guess this would be the Masked Cooer, yeah, under the little the bird helmet or whatever, it's Rudy Giuliani is co-conspirator 1, and that means that he is potentially in trouble. There could be charges coming at him, and that's not good. I mean, the charges aren't even here yet, and he sounded on the verge of tears. So that's gonna be bad for him, but that's not all that's gonna be bad for him. He's facing this pressure coming from Jack Smith, but now there's new reports that he's also facing pressure coming from Donald Trump. In a new report by the Rolling Stone, Trump advisors claim that Trump and his team are trying desperately to come up with whatever strategy will allow him to evade doing jail time in these new indictments. And the leading strategy seems to be throw people like Rudy Giuliani under the legal bus. They're apparently arguing that it was the lawyers leading Trump rather than Trump leading the lawyers. It's an argument the former president likes, one says. Well, of course, it absolves him of responsibility. And the team is on board with it. And so John Eastman and Rudy Giuliani, they gave a lot of counsel. Other people can decide how sound it was. So that's co-conspirator 1 and I believe 2 there. Trump's chief spokesman, Stephen Chung, told Rolling Stone in a brief statement last week that the then president's post-election actions, under advice of many attorneys, were in furtherance of his duties as commander-in-chief and upholding of our Constitution. So that seems to be the strategy, Francesca. That is not necessarily a good or effective strategy, but if you're Rudy Giuliani, and you already are receiving phone calls, likely from the special counsel to be like, so are you gonna cooperate or are you gonna spend the rest of your sorry life in prison? And now you're finding out that Trump is planning to throw you under the bus anyway. Why wouldn't you flip on him?
No, man, you gotta fall. Soldier's gotta fall. He's gotta serve his time. He ain't no snitch, all right? Come on, Rudy. What you gonna do? You can't do time for the boss. You can't do time for the boss, please. Typical, like if we're talking about a mob, they gotta do time. The boss can't fall. The boss can't fall, so sorry. But my favorite part is just like, I think, Donald Trump wasn't able to do it while he was in office, but now he's really a job creator if you think about it, because the amount of lawyers that are going to be needed to defend Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, and then lawyers who have to defend the lawyers who are defending Rudy. It's just like the old woman who swallowed the fly of lawyers, and it's brilliant. And so, congrats to all the lawyers who bought their degrees in some island nation on a cruise.
I mean, look, he ran through the competent lawyers. He ran through the corrupt lawyers. Now he's ready to throw the insane drunk lawyers under the bus. What is he going to do with all these trials? He's seriously, we know what the sort of person he is. He's gonna be calling up like fictional TV lawyers like that She-Hulk, she's got one hell of a punch.
Yeah.
She defend me. Meghan Markle, not a big fan of her, but did she ever end up getting her law license on Suits?
Rudy will call Joe Pesci and be like, the thing you did in the movie, could you do that for me?
Get me Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, get me Marissa Tomei to explain how a car works. My God.
Yeah, she can take a look at the tire tread pattern on Rudy Giuliani's back and evaluate it. Anyway, this is
from the bus that rolled over him. This is great. This is 100%. Brilliant. Yes.
It's just a good day in the news.
It's a good day.
Day in the news. Anyway, Rudy, it's not looking great for you, buddy. You might want to look at a new strategy. We live in truly ridiculous times. Thank you, Frank Morningtree, for gifting 10 subs over on Twitch. How nice of you. Thank you. And Sonic Screwdragon reminds us, MAGA, making attorneys get attorneys. Nice, I have heard that before. I love that, yeah.
I haven't heard that.
Okay. With that said, we've been giving you our thoughts about all this, but there are some other people, and some of them have things that are arguably thoughts. Let's jump into this.
No, this doesn't count in a court of law, but do you think Trump had any idea that he was breaking the law when he was asking Mike Pence not to certify? And how are you going to prove that Trump knew there wasn't any election fraud? And how are you going to prove that these were corrupt intentions if Trump thought he was doing the righteous thing? You can't. It was just politics. It's all politics.
Okay, those are great dumb questions. Thank you. The answer to all of them is read the indictment, you dumb donkey. It's in there. All of it. Again, it's not just his thoughts that matter. That's not illegal. It's not just things you say. It's not what is illegal in this case. It's not what's being charged. Jesse Waters, try to keep up. But in terms of whether he knows that it's illegal, he was advised by many people that these sorts of things are not possible under the Constitution. He knows that, he was told that. In terms of the election fraud, he was assured by an incredibly long list of officials inside of his own administration that there was not election fraud, that they had not found it, that he had not secretly won the election. He was told over and over and over again by some of the highest ranking Republicans in government, and he continued to say it anyway because it was convenient to him. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Let's see what else he's got.
Don't you think for a second he's not going to unleash hell on all of his political enemies? This is only the beginning of politicians putting other politicians and their families in prison. Sad we had to go down this road, but this is where we are, and now we have to finish it.
Okay. I love when someone says that it's sad, and they clearly have never been less sad than they are at that moment. Also being super transparent, Francesca, he's saying Trump is going to, out of a sense of vengeance, just lock up politicians and their families. It'll have nothing to do with anything but good. We have to finish it. He's talking about some sort of solution that is final. That's amazing. He's the new Tucker Carlson, and he seems to understand the expectations of that job in pushing for mass lockups of his political opponents.
I was just gonna say that. I was like, oh, okay, incitement of violence from your viewers. Jesse Waters stepping into the big fashy boots of Tucker Carlson, goose stepping under his desk there. Yeah, like, and by the way, Jesse Waters will be absolutely fine if any violence breaks out. He'll be there watching from the glass office in New York, being like, oh, get me a cappuccino. So just don't ask the question. That's what I think about, like all Fox News, like all right-wing mouthpieces. Don't even ask the questions because it sounds too much like a lie already. I think he's trying that and it's not really working because he's not a politician. He's the effing president. There's so much documentation about every single meeting he took, when he took it, who he took it with, all the phone calls that were made. There are recordings, right? There are attorneys generals who were asked to watch random YouTube videos by Sidney Powell to look into Italy Gate, the most bonkers election fraud theory possible, and they did. They did it all. They looked up, they looked everywhere for the slightest hint of any irregularities and any election fraud that would have handed the election to Donald Trump. And they couldn't find it. He mobilized the weight of the entire US government against Joe Biden and against this election and came up with nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. 100%.
The evidence is right there. This is not a politician. It's not a politician. He's the president.
Francesca, the evidence is there, but clearly he didn't do the rating, which is hardly, I'm sure, the first time in his life. But look, the interesting thing, of course, is not that Jesse Waters didn't read the indictment before doing that, but he is surer than you have ever been sure of anything that his audience has not read it either and will never read it. Like, that is the only way that you can do a monologue like that, is knowing that your audience is as willfully ignorant as you yourself are. But speaking of willfully ignorant, here's Greg Gutfeld.
The actual charges you can't take seriously. Their feelings masquerading as facts, their opinions trying to be passed off as crimes. It's garbage dressed up with a legal thesaurus, and it's criminalizing thoughts and it's criminalizing speech. You have every right to think an election might be rigged or fixed. I mean, is every institution perfect?
Yeah, you do have that right, and you know that I know why I know that is because in the indictment it says that you have that right to think it, to say it even. That's not what the problem is, which Greg Gutfeld would know if he had read the indictment. But like Jesse Waters, he of course did not. And so since they are never going to actually engage with any of the evidence, they cannot, because then they will utterly fall apart. They instead have to retreat to fictional territory that they think they can win the battle on. So once again, as I said, nothing that he just said is being criminalized, but they like the idea of being able to say this is just legal cancel culture or something. So they just say it's that. They're going after him for what he thought or what he said or for starting the insurrection. Now, they're of course not charging him for any of those things. But again, he knows his audience won't know that because they didn't read the indictment either.
Right. No, but again, with projection, Greg Gutfeld is saying, feelings are not fact. Anyone can think, and then in the same breath, anyone can think that the election was stolen and unjustly given to Biden. Like, whoa, hang on, time out. You just said that feelings are not fact. And then you're saying that anyone can think that an election was stolen. And effectively, you guys have been telling your audience that this election was stolen in no uncertain terms. You've been sued for exactly that. And you're basically telling your audience that this fiction, that the election was stolen, has become fact. You've been riding on the idea that feelings are fact for so many years now. I mean, before Trump, but goddamn, like during Trump years, absolutely Fox News has been the purveyors of feelings are facts. So don't turn it around and be like, feelings aren't facts. Man, that's the whole thing. You go and ask MAGA people like, how do you feel about, Trump being indicted on all these crimes? Like, well, I feel in his heart, he's not a criminal. And you're like, okay, cool, well, that's normal. Sorry, I didn't mean to do the Southern accent, but everyone, including Southerners, are MAGA or not Southerners, but you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's like that's what they ride on.
Yes.
Except 100%. This is not a civilian. This is not a MAGA follower. This is the president of the United States. And like I said, who used the entire weight of the government to try and pursue these faulty claims. And those things, those are crimes.
Yeah. 100%. And by the way, I'm gonna close this section by answering another one of Jesse Waters' stupid questions. How are you gonna prove that what they said they didn't really believe? Do you not know? Didn't your company just lose like $700 million lawsuit over exactly that? They proved it quite well, actually, in that case. So there is precedent for the ability to do that. Anyway, with that said, let's move outside of Fox News to others who are gonna opportunistically use this indictment for their own benefit, starting with Kari Lake.
I really believe that those other people running in the Republican race should stand up, speak out in support of President Trump, talk about how this is an injustice unlike we've ever seen with our Department of Justice going after an innocent man. And frankly, they should suspend their campaigns and step behind and support President Trump and the American people so we can save this great country.
Yep. I think even some liberals might even agree with you.
What? I mean, I'm not technically a liberal, but like, I don't think they're gonna give a damn, let alone agree. But what you saw from Kari Lake that's the most amazing wishful thinking ever. They should speak out in support of him. Okay, that's going a little bit far. They should stop running against him. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, look, what she's doing, of course, is she's trying to take this opportunity to be like, I'm gonna make Donald Trump love me more than anyone's loved anyone, because I'm saying the craziest stuff for him. But there is competition in that. And so we're gonna play the competition for you. Then Francesca, I want your opinion. Who's weathering this storm better? So who is going to challenge Kari Lake? Who do you think?
It's important that we put our full faith and hope in God and not anything that we see in the headlines and not anything that we see happening in the news. Our real hope needs to be in God, and Jesus Christ is my Savior, and I know He's yours as well. And God has plans much bigger than this.
I love that because obviously this is her philosophy, the philosophy she's lived her entire life. Don't pay attention to what's in the news. Don't pay attention to the allegations. Don't know what's going on. I'll get by, I guess. I don't know. And so I do agree with her though, that as a legal strategy, Donald Trump is kind of down to just praying to God. So that's convenient. What do you think?
I thought that was an interesting God tack from Marge, right? Like usually it is just about defending Trump and everyone's a liar and demon rats are doing this with the MSDNC or whatever. And this was like, okay, we're hearkening on the evangelical note here, which I think is, and I hate to say this, the last bastion of a lot of the right wing is just like, well, God has a plan. And if He wants us to have a criminal president who's been indicted, many times and who's sexually assaulted many people, well, that is the plan. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like that is what they run to when they've lost on every front that's based in reality and, here on earth in the physical world. They're like, well, let's get ethereal with it and let's talk about Jesus.
And look, I get why. It'll probably help them, but just, for those of us who care about reality, telling your base, don't pay attention to what's happening in the news is just, it's usually not a sign of strength. It's how I would put it. Anyway, that's all the time we have for the first hour. Thank you for joining us for Indictment Day. More to come in the aftermath. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Iadarola. I'll see you soon.